What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and oh my god, I am having so much fun playing with the newly buffed up Guardians of the Galaxy. It is just so satisfying trying to predict your opponent's plays, and this deck has a bunch of ways to take advantage of the Guardians, forcing your opponents into specific plays, and also putting yourself in a pretty good position if your opponent does not play exactly where you think they are going to. The locations are really well set up for us in this first game because my opponent probably doesn't want to play to Danger Room, so I'm going to throw Nebula there, and they probably do want to play to Shuri's Lab because you can get additional power out of that location, and then your cards might just move over into Great Web anyways, which means that you get to play even more cards into Shuri's Lab and get additional value. Also, Hope Summers, the current season pass card, is really good for people trying to play with Guardians. Like, it's really good to play Guardians against Hope Summers because your opponent is additionally incentivized to play to wherever they have dropped their Hope already. So we're able to get an insane amount of power out of our Drax here. 18 power hitting that Guardian trigger and then doubling again from Shuri's Lab after getting that Guardian trigger is really good. On turn 5, I will have to power through my opponent's Negasonic Teenage Warhead, but I can do that with Rocket Raccoon, so that way I can safely drop Miss Marvel into that center location. And like I said in my previous video, I'm playing a bunch of Miss Marvel decks right now because I just got her for the first time as a free-to-play player, but some players will drop her in favor of Jean Grey in lists that otherwise look similar to that to again force your opponent to play to one given location. We're again going to be like really well set up for exactly what my opponent is trying to do here because they magic Danger Room on turn 5. But then on turn 6, we are going to see that I draw Storm. So that allows me to take out Limbo, and I'm also just going to move Jeff over into Limbo while I do that. This gives me a little bit of insurance in case any of my cards from Limbo drift back over into the Great Web. That way I will still have the Miss Marvel trigger at that location, and then I'll throw down one final Guardian into Shuri's Lab to end this game. And we're going to end this one with a cosmic victory. My opponent, thinking it was going to be a 7-turn game, of course, is going to play largely to my advantage here, but I just thought this was a great showcase to kick this video off. My opponent on a Silver Surfer list, but they're not going to have time to drop the Silver Surfer. They're just going to play a Brood this turn, and we will beat them in all 3 locations. While I do find it incredibly satisfying to try to predict where my opponent is going to play, we can all use some help sometimes, and Daredevil is also really clutch in this archetype. It's a nice crutch though too to have, and it can also be useful with Miss Marvel being a 2-cost card to help fill out the curve in interesting ways. But in this game you can see we've got Gamora and Professor X, and that's just going to give us a perfect setup on turn 5 that basically amounts to giving us a position where we can't really lose, and we'll be able to Alioth on the final turn of the game in a variety of different configurations. I have to storm the Strange Academy here, which is a little bit awkward. I would much rather prefer to storm Oscorp Tower or Murder World or Hala. Those are great storm locations. However, with Strange Academy there, if I didn't storm it, things were going to move into the flooded location regardless. So a little bit awkward, but now I will be able to follow up Storm with a Rocket Raccoon and a Jeff, which we might be able to move around later. But what is nice is it just works out here. We are going to be beating my opponent in this flooded location 10-9, which is really, really nice math. Just have to be winning by 1. We could still lose this location later if like a Wolverine flips over into the flooded location, but for right now, having priority in that location or winning in that location will work towards giving us priority on the final turn, which is really important for Alioth in this turn with Daredevil Sight, and then the option to play either Gamora or Professor X. There's not really much my opponent can do here. We're going to see that basically no matter what my opponent plays, we're going to be able to get a huge advantage. If my opponent plays to Throne Room, we can Gamora in Throne Room to have a ridiculously powerful 24 power card in that location. However, none of these cards are looking to flip. There's no Wolverine here. Wolverine was the only thing that I had to check for, and without Wolverine, we can freely play Professor into Oscorp Tower, which sets me up for an Alioth in Throne Room on the final turn of the game. I will lose Throne Room, but my opponent won't be able to play anything else to those other locations, and that will get us the retreat. This game, a little bit different. I'm actually going to storm Throne Room because Camartage is a great enough location for our Guardians to go, and I want to storm one of these locations, start locking some stuff down. And I think initially about playing Groot in the flooded location, but then my opponent snaps. So I'm a little bit worried that my opponent is just going to beat me in the flooded location regardless. And I do have a similar setup to the previous game where I've got Daredevil, Gamora, Professor X, and Alioth. So I think I might want to play Daredevil on turn 4 to set me up for the final turns of the game. This is awkward because now I am definitely losing in the flooded location. No point even really playing Daredevil to that location. I should just play Daredevil elsewhere because that power could be useful for helping me win one of the other locations. But now I've got perfect sight for these final turns of the game, and we'll see what we are able to get up to here. My opponent's play this turn is Sarah, and they are continuing to avoid Camartage. They don't want to give me any value on my Guardians, but I will still be able to hit this turn with Gamora, and that will give me a priority lead going into the final turn of the game. However, I don't think Alioth alone is going to cut it. My opponent has a bunch of energy cheat here. By the way, I snapped a little bit too late, just kind of got thrown off there with the fact that it was the Daredevil timer. So I didn't have enough time to snap there, unfortunately. But I'm not going to play Alioth. Sorry, talking over myself a little bit here. If I play Alioth, I think my opponent is just going to be able to battle for both Camartage and Savage Lands. Regardless of where I play the Alioth, I think I will lose. However, if I play Professor X to protect against Shang-Chi on Gamora, a double Rocket Raccoon trigger because of Camartage might be enough to take it for me in that center location. So that's the plan here, playing around Shang-Chi and then just hoping for a big Rocket Raccoon to be enough. It's actually a pretty fun final turn though. We are going to see my opponent did play to both locations, and it does look like a Shang-Chi is coming in Savage Land, but we are going to get that double Rocket Raccoon trigger here before canceling out that Shang-Chi, and then this is what makes this end turn so silly. Gladiator on Camartage my opponent is forced into making. Gonna kill my Nebula, but it is not going to be able to take down my double buffed up Drax here, which is going to add 13 more power to the location. I actually win this game even if Gladiator double missed because I would beat my opponent on differential, having a 6 power lead in Savage Lands to their 3 power lead in the flooded location. But either way, really silly final turn. And one last clip to finish this video off. My opponent used Killmonger to kill my Nebula, which is unfortunate and definitely takes away a lot of the power that I had in that flooded location. And then I'm going to Professor X the Nexus, which looks really weird. However, I have Miss Marvel already in Dark Dimension, so we're actually tied currently in the Nexus. And I can actually beat my opponent in the flooded location as well by playing Jeff to that location, plus the additional power that I put in the Nexus from Miss Marvel will also go to the flooded location. So this game is just going to come down to differential. We're tied in the Nexus, I'm beating them in the flooded location, and I currently have a little bit of a lead in Dark Dimension as well, and I know Drax is going to trigger this turn, so I'm going to have 13 power that we are playing into Dark Dimension, plus the 8 over from the Nexus. So it's up to my opponent to beat that with their 6 energy on the final turn of the game here. Let's see if they can do it and surprise them with a huge Miss Marvel comeback. Wanted to highlight a little bit of Miss Marvel action as well since I am playing that build of the deck. They don't really have much. They've got Deathlock plus Forge plus Deadpool, which is only 13 power. We actually tie in Dark Dimension as well, and I get my opponent for 4 over in the flooded location. That's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace.